Well, you might recognise this as being the entrance to the Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust's fabulous reserve here at Misson. Back for a second moth trapping session. It's June the 12th today. The weather for moth trapping is just as perfect as it could be. It does have a downside, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, but there's been rain, in fact thunderstorms in much of Nottinghamshire, but thankfully not east of where I live at Market Warsop, and it's bone dry here at Misson in the very northern part of Nottinghamshire. The downside to it being very warm and very humid is that there are mosquitoes here by the thousand, and they've developed quite a liking for me already. I think the best idea, until the sky is dark enough to warrant turning the light on, is to have a wander around with my faithful assistant Annette. Not had a walk with Annette for a while, so I'm going to have a walk round into another part of the reserve just while it's dusk, and we'll see if we can turn anything up just by using the net. With one or two moths flying, and also I'm sure the mosquitoes won't appreciate a moving target. This really is a wonderful habitat. I've walked a couple of hundred yards from the car now. I was going to go up to the corner to a site where the larvae of marsh carpet were reportedly last found here many years ago. It doesn't seem, well, I think it's unlikely that the moth is still here. It's declined nationally, and it's certainly declined in Nottinghamshire. There's not been any records for years now. There are plans to do a survey for the larvae, but by all accounts they'll have a job finding the larval food plant, which I think is meadow rue. But what a habitat it is. I've not seen too many moths. There's one or two micros flying, but what there are a lot of are mosquitoes, and they like me. It is a beautiful night, very warm. It's still over 20 degrees centigrade on arrival here. It got into the high 20s again today. It was very still, bit of breeze around the outskirts of the thunderstorm that passed through much of the Midlands area and certainly the city of Nottingham today. Thankfully though, we've missed it here. No rain whatsoever. Rain is much needed in this northern part of Nottinghamshire, I've noticed. But conditions are prime conditions for moth trapping, with that lack of wind, very humid, very warm temperatures. The only trouble is anything else that cares to fly at night with 6 legs is likely to thud into the light. We could be inundated with flies this evening. Well, that's a lovely picture. The sun now down over the horizon and just about to fire up the light. Time is just gone 21:45, so in a minute or two we'll fire up the light. But those last rays of the sunshine are lighting up those cirrus clouds beautifully. It's the perfect picture, hopefully, to the perfect trapping session. This has the potential to be good. Well, time to fire it up. Well, you may well think that, because this is early in the session, that this is a common swift. It isn't. This is actually a map-winged swift. Map-winged swifts are noticeably larger than common swift, but this is a form, it's a known form called Gallicus, which I've never seen before, and it's pretty much all brown with just that small spot on the centre of the wing there. Normally it's much better marked than this, and the females are larger than the males. So this is the first time I've seen one of these for a number of years. Not had this at home, so it's not a species that you're really likely to get in an urban or suburban area, but it's a nice one to get, and this is map-winged swift. Well, we're approaching an hour of the trapping session, and it's going well. It's nice and steady. We're on to about 25 species as soon as I put down barred yellow, which has just appeared in somewhere. Lots of flies, but this is all right. This is handleable. I was expecting and dreading a large rush of moths, but it hasn't turned out that way. Plenty of swifts, a number of common swift, several map-winged swift, and one ghost moth that's come in. But the most colourful moth didn't hang around. That was a peach blossom. Peach blossoms, I'll put a photo in here because they never settle down. It takes a long time for them to settle down in a pot, and so I've not been able to get it in order to film it, but I'll put a nice photo in instead because it's a beautiful moth. One that you'll never trap in large quantities on any sort of trapping session, but that's another one that's just come in. I'll pop one up. Here it is. We'll see if it eventually settles down, because it's one of the most beautiful moths that we have here in the UK. It's an absolute stunner. But it's going well. Decent range of species, even good numbers of micros as well in terms of species. There's no big numbers of anything yet, of any particular species. So we'll see what turns up, see what comes in. Temperature at the moment 18 centigrade, and that's lovely. Well, I've managed to work my magic on this peach blossom, one of the most very aptly named moths we have. It really is an absolute beauty, and I know I've said it before, but the Victorian Edwardian naturalists knew what they were doing when they were naming moths. I think many moths were named by women rather than men. How many men would come up with peach blossom? But that's neither here nor there. But what we do have is an absolutely stunning moth. It is common, it's widespread. It'll turn up in urban traps and suburban traps too. It's a species I've had several times at home, but I'm looking to get this once a year, to be honest. But out in a situation such as Misson Carr here, it's altogether more common, but I'm still not going to see many of these this evening. But finally, this one has stayed put, and you can see just what a beautiful moth it is. There's beautiful, delicate pink to peach coloured markings. The background colour is like an olive. It's a truly beautiful moth. So that's peach blossom, one of the most appropriately named moths we have. Well, there's a nice steady stream of moths coming in still, and I'm very pleased that the number of micro species has also increased. And nothing spectacular yet or unusual. it is still early days, but the conditions just beautiful. Not so many mosquitoes now. There's quite a few around the light though occasionally, but there's lots of diptera flying around and one or two beetles that have come onto the sheet. But as you can see, there's lots of moths flying around now, so that's a good sign that numbers are picking up. And indeed I did run the trap last night at home and had many more moths or species of moths than I did earlier in the week at Lamb Wood. Well, this is certainly more like it, and in fact there's more micros, far more micros actually, than macros at the moment. Micro moths obviously are the smaller moths in general, but that ratio will probably change in the next hour, and more of the macro moths will start to come in. But still nothing terrifically unusual yet, but we're doing well in terms of species. We have had turnip moth in and beautiful hook tip, which is always a nice moth to see. And as you can see, there's lots of insect activity around the light here, and we have some new arrivals, so I need to have a look around the sheet now and see what we've got. Well, of the moths that's in, an increasing number of moths that are coming in, there's been quite a few Geometridae moths, like this scorched carpet. Scorched carpet is an absolute beauty of a moth, not common in Nottinghamshire. This is not an everyday moth, and many people have probably never even trapped this. I've done quite well, and I do get this at home occasionally, but maybe only a single record annually. Beautifully marked. I do love many of the carpets that are similarly marked like this. It really is an absolute joy to catch this, and this one is in pristine condition. So we've been lucky that this one hasn't been disturbed while I filmed this, but this is scorched carpet, a truly beautiful moth. Now that's a scene that I've been wanting to see for many a month. You can't see all the activity on the sheet, but there are lots of moths coming in now, and keeping up with what's coming in is quite difficult. There's a coxcomb prominent, in case I forget, because I have a couple of species that I can see now on the sheet, like lattice teeth and something else which I've forgotten, but that's how it gets. It's now very, very busy. I don't think I've filmed this amount of activity since I've been doing this channel. It's becoming everything that I expected from Misson Carr. This is absolutely brilliant. You can always tell when a moth trapper's having a good night by the amount of containers. Now, when I stand containers up, that means there's a moth in them, and in those that's in that plastic sandwich box, they've all got 2 micro moths in each. It's busy. The holding cage has only got 3 moths in, one of which is a white point, and this one is definitely a white point and not a clay. It stands out as different as chalk and cheese. But there's a couple of other moths that have come in as the moths descend from the skies now, and I need to write them down. But I don't think that I've showed you this amount of moth activity on any of the moth trapping videos that I've done on this channel. Well, as always, I have to feature this moth because this is one of our most attractive moths that we have, and this is a barred yellow. And for those of you who can't understand why people are attracted and find moths attractive, you haven't seen one of these. It's a beautiful species. It's more a moth of rural areas, but it does turn up at home, and it's an absolute belter. And yet again, as in the case of so many moths that are generally regarded as, and are indeed common, it probably suffers from being common, when really it's a super moth, absolutely marvellous. I love this, I always have done. I remember seeing this for the first time at Eakring, and I was stunned, and I still love to see this moth now. This is a barred yellow, an absolute belter. As you'd expect in weather conditions such as this, lots of moths coming in. However, the amount that's here now would probably be at least double that had we not had the hot, dry weather of last year, which has had an effect on the numbers of moths. Getting a good species list now. In fact, we're just over 60 species. But in terms of numbers of individual species, not a great deal really, to be honest. But we do have lots of moths, and lots of moths are coming in and dropping down onto the sheet and coming around the light. This really is one of those nights, something good is going to turn up, something that will get me quite excited probably, which is dangerous at my age. But you probably can't see from here, but there are moths all over the box on all sides. It's going to take a while to go through and just pick out any unusual ones at the end of this session. And I think the way it's going, that box is going to be pretty much like a sheet that's used for light trapping in the Amazon jungle. It becomes totally covered in moths. This place is now really starting to live up to its potential. It's nice like this that, although it's great to have an MV light, it just shows you how moths are attracted to it. But if you're new to moth trapping, then maybe an MV light isn't the way to go enter the hobby, and an actinic light, which is a fluorescent tube, would be the best way. You wouldn't get quite so many moths as this. MV can produce so many moths that it does become completely overwhelming almost, and at times you need two people to monitor what's coming in and to keep tabs on those moths that's coming in and going. This is very busy, and I'm glad it is, because I haven't trapped and had this number of moths for a couple of years, easy. Used to get a lot of moths in Sherwood Forest, but I think this tops the numbers of moths. Although we did have over 1,000 moths just in 2 hours one night at Clipson Old Quarter near the centre tree. I remember Dillis and myself, we had some massive counts there, but a lot of those counts were made up of the grass veneers, the crambids. Still a little bit too early, just the first few crambids just starting to appear now, but there are plenty of moths regardless of whether there's crambids or not. Well, here's the largest moth of the night so far, and this is the magnificent eyed hawk-moth, a truly beautifully marked moth. It really is a stunning species. The markings are various shades, almost like pastel shading. The lighter markings, or the lighter ground colour, has an element of pink or buffishness to it. It really is a beautiful hawk moth, and It derives the name eyed hawk moths from the hind wings, and when this moth becomes agitated or starts to warm up, then the hind wings will show those beautiful eye-like markings which are on a glorious pink background. But because of the resting position of eyed hawk moths, those hind wings aren't visible. But as we've got some footage now, we'll see if we can expose those eyes. There we go. Look. Just look at that. That's the reaction there. See how the wings flicked open? What a moth that is. An absolute belter, isn't it? Stunning things. Absolutely stunning. So that's the magnificent eyed hawk moth. Now I'll quickly talk about this because I'm afraid I can't let a moth like this go by without filming it. And I know it was in the last video I did from here, but the intention of this channel and of these videos are to encourage people into the hobby, people that might be thinking about it. And scorchwing here is one such moth that I think has the power and the ability to generate an interest in somebody. This is a stunning moth. It's got increasingly more common in the last few years, to be honest, but the unique thing about this is the wing markings. Gives the appearance that those wings are vibrating incredibly quickly. It is, without doubt, another stunning moth, and I'm not going to apologise for showing this. We need moths like this to get people interested in moths. It's funny because as you go through the night, if you're trapping for more than a couple of hours, the clientele, so to speak, changes once you get into the early hours, and we're somewhere around about 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't anticipate going home very soon, because when I mentioned a little while ago that I have a feeling that something's going to drop in, something good, well, it has. I was on one of my little forays around the light to see what's come in, and sat on the corner of the box was the moth that was in here. Now, I know this is a goodie in terms of Nottinghamshire. There's two species which this could be. They're very closely related and look very similar, and I've not seen either of them. I don't think many people have seen this species in Nottinghamshire, but of the two species, I think this is a peacock moth which is in here. The other one is sharp-angled peacock, and there are slight differences, but I need to take this home and photograph it. But this is what you call a county rarity. This is a moth, say, I've not seen before, so it's going home, and I stay longer. I've hardly touched my flask, but at least what's in it will still be hot. And I've also got cramp in my leg. I don't know which to deal with first. We'll make sure this is safe and secure and going home to Market Wartop first. Well, coming up to 1:30, and it's time to leave. I think it's a steady pack up, and I'm running out of power on the phone as well, so I need to at least have an ending to this video. But what a trapping session it's been. You can see very active. We've now got 6 poplar hawk moths in. Lots of moths still coming in, but fewer different species arriving. So from Misson Carr, unless I have enough battery power to film something else, it's time to pack up. But what a session it's been.